Alright, so let's say we take the city of Houston, Texas, and put like a big fence, prison bars type thing around it. That's about 2.2 million people. Well, that's about how many people last year that we had incarcerated in our jail system. And so here I'm talking today to talk to you guys about overcrowding in prisons and the negative effects that it has. So, okay, this is just a little overview. Last year we had 2.2 million people incarcerated. And this is a problem because prisons have like budget cuts now, and they're having to cut back on staffing and stuff like that. And so we can't afford to keep all these people in here, and it's causing like health problems for the prisoners. More people are getting in fights, the inmates and guards and stuff like that. Since 2003, crime in the prisons has jumped up 20%. So that's like drugs are being traded around and more fights and more violence and stuff like that in prisons. So violence in prisons, this is a big thing because it's not safe. A prison isn't safe if inmates are fighting each other and inmates are fighting guards. 31% of federal prisons are operating at over maximum capacity. So if a prison can only hold like 100 people, let's say, and it has 120% in it, that's above maximum capacity. And that's not healthy for a prison because of the violence and stuff and the diseases that go around. And so 27% of inmates versus inmates fighting has gone on in an increase. And this is a pretty big deal because the guards and stuff are supposed to be keeping the people safe, and if prisoners are fighting each other, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And a 32% increase on guards versus inmates assaults, and it's the guards' job to keep the prison safe, but if they're getting attacked, obviously they can't keep anything safe. So, living conditions. Facilities are not able to stop the spread of like diseases and stuff like that in prisons, so we need to help control that by cutting down the people in there. Because when there's overcapacity, they don't have enough medical support to keep up to that. And the kitchens and stuff like that can't have as much food, and they're having a hard time controlling all kinds of stuff like that. HIV, tuberculosis, and hepatitis are some of the main diseases that go around in prisons, and they're having a hard time stopping the spread of that. And 10% of the prison's budgets go towards inmate health care, so when they could be using this other 10% to keep like facilities safe and help like workers, give them better equipment and stuff like that, they have to use this money to go towards the inmates' health care. 20% of the state prisons are non-violent offenders, and 60% of federal prisons are non-violent offenders. Non-violent offenders are people that have done like tax evasion or other crimes like that, where they didn't actually harm anybody, and they're in prison because they've done something that they didn't hurt anybody, but they did something that was against the law, and so they're sitting in jail. Basically, when they could be out, they could be like on parole or house arrest or doing a work thing where they wouldn't be in jail. And 16% of the inmates are 55 years or older, so that's people that have been in jail for a long time, for longer sentences. They don't need to be in jail for as long as that. Reducing crime population, or reducing prison population is what we need to do. That would help because they're cutting back on the number of prison sentencing for people in jail. So like some states have decided that people that have like sold drugs and stuff like that, they're going to give them lesser sentences so that the people that have sold drugs, instead of being in for 20 years, now they're in there for 10. So that's a way that they're helping slow down crime rate and stuff like that in the prisons. We need to have more alternatives to prison sentences. Rather than like sending everybody to prison for doing something wrong, we need to send them to jail for the less time, or we need to like have them on parole or house arrest, or we could do like the workforce where they like, so we're promoting more jobs and stuff like that. And also, like, guards have started using harsher techniques for violence in prisons, like more pepper spray and like stun guns and electric shields and stuff like that, to help kind of like stop the violence and stuff that is going on in prisons. To also combat this, they're separating prisoners by like level of how aggressive they are. The different levels, they have like maximum security, which is like the highest offenders, like the super violent people, and they don't get like any basically rights. They're stuck in their solitary confinement and stuff like that because they're super violent. And it goes all the way down to the lowest level, or the minimum prisoners. And these are the people that are allowed to leave partially during the day and like go and do some job work and stuff like that. So that's helping because they can kind of leave and get out of the prison, and that helps to get their aggression out because they're not stuck in the cell all day and stuff like that. Another way we can help is that we can redesign prisons, and by redesigning the prisons, you can get rid of like blind spots around like the older corridors and stuff like that, and that's a lot of the time where people are getting hurt because if you're walking around they can't see, and their inmates are like jumping out and hurting the guards or getting other violence. So that's the way they're reducing it. And they're getting rid of the older bars that are in the cells, and they're using like plexiglass that is like a 1/4 inch thick, and so that it can help see inside the cells better. than the bars can, and so that's helping. And also, people like inmates have committed suicide by like hanging themselves from the bars, and with this plexiglass like door, they can't hang themselves obviously from the door. Just a general summary. What we need to do is we need to stop the amount of people that are in prisons. With 2.2 million people in there, and 60% of them being nonviolent offenders, if they could just get rid of like half the people that were in there for so long, that would be 1.1 million people that were gone. And so, obviously, if they're a nonviolent offender, they're not hurting anybody in the community, like physically. So if they could figure out ways, as in parole or something like that, where they could try to get some of those people out of jail, that would definitely help with reducing the amount of people in prison with the overcrowding. And it would be more safer for the inmates and safer for the guards and people that are working in the prisons, like the doctors and people that are visiting and stuff like that, because it's really dangerous when you have all those people that are built up in the prison and they get all angry. And lack of funds is the main cause for overcrowding, with government cutbacks to everything, like schools and prisons and stuff like that. Prisons are getting hard, so when they have to get staff and all that cut back, they can't really afford to keep the prisons as safe as they need to be. So those are my sources. That's the main thing. We need to try to figure out a way to cut back on prisons overcrowding.
Little golf clap.